you lost, CMC, even if you lost Cooper Cup, there's no giving up, there's no giving up, cause that's the things you gotta go through. Even if you lost David Njoku, this isn't a time to let go. With a broken fibula for Isaiah Pacheco. Heck no, watching that headshot to Tua made me throw up in the PCL to Puka Nakua. These injuries are sickening. That hip drop tackle to Joe Mixon, I'm living. I lost T. Higgins, you wanted to win money, but you won't see though. It hurts worse than a calf injury to Debo. This year's been a challenge, and now I just lost Keenan Allen. I need some balance, just teamed in and scoring up. You lost Jordan Love, your season's on life support. Don't pull the cord and plug out and make a trade offer. I had to Google a bleep when I lost Kenneth Walker. And you're feeling down, you lost A.J. Brown, you lost Hollywood Brown. You could turn it around, this season's been a roller coaster. I'm really hoping I can get back Raheem Mostert. Making these moves is burdensome. My tight ends are garbage without Jason Ferguson, cause there's no giving up, there's no giving up. And Evan Ingram pulled his hammy warming up. Whoa, we're back. It is the Friday Football Freakout. My name is Saratoga Slim, a.k.a. Dad Rap, and I got Curtis Manlow with me as my special guest from the Dudes After Dark. How's it going tonight, Curtis?
Hey, doing well, Slim, man. Happy to be on. Thanks for having me. So nice to be back in the Friday night time slot. We had a little bit of success on Dudes After Dark, so been a good weekend. Looking forward to it. Ready to chat some fantasy football here with you tonight.
So it's your fiance's birthday today.
Yesterday, yeah, but we're celebrating.
Yes, you're celebrating today. Okay. And you still came on, so I appreciate it. I really do. And, I heard you have 8 fantasy football teams you have?
Yeah. So I have this problem where I just don't say no. So people ask me to play leagues, so we got a little bit of everything. Got some best ball, got some pretty funky lineups. And in a fiance's league that she does with her family, one with high school buddies. It's all over the board. So a lot of group messages, a lot of different lineups.
Hey, man, that's the only way. I have my buddies from college. I've been doing a league with them for over 20 years. And if it wasn't for them, for fantasy football, I don't know if I'd be keeping in touch with them. So shout out to all my boys out there, my beta boys out there. We've been doing that league forever. I'm in 4 leagues. I got a best ball league with them. First year we're doing best ball. So that's a lot of fun. And I got my neighborhood league, and I got another league in. I'm with Ja Rule, the rapper. I talk more about that another day, but that's my big money league. Yeah. And then, so I got 4 leagues I'm in. You're in 8. So we are in 12 leagues altogether. So we should have plenty to talk about. And I'm just going to get right into it because for week 4, the news has just been out of control. And I like to start off the show with the news of the day. And as each week goes along, we are getting to see more and more crazy injury news. But before we jump into the injury news, we're going to do a quick recap of the game last night. The Cowboys beat the Giants 20-15. And for me, I am a Giants fan, and that was a disgusting game. It was just horrible to see the Giants could not score a touchdown. It was also horrible to see Malik Neighbors get a concussion at the end of the game after having an amazing game. He showed out. CeeDee Lamb had a big game, but overall ugly game. Lots of penalties. What did you think about the game last night, Curtis?
Typical Thursday night NFL football, right? There was a time years ago when we only got Thursday night NFL on Thanksgiving, right? And then maybe a couple other times later in the season, we said, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we had this every week? And now we do, and everybody complains the games aren't good. So you kind of careful what you wish for sometimes. I'm usually one of the people that picks a quarterback late in my draft, so I have Dak Prescott in about 3 leagues. So I was feeling pretty good, after the first quarter and a half last night, thinking it was going to go well. As someone who bet the Giants, I was fine with the outcome. Had a little bit of money on Giants money line as well too. I thought Daniel Jones played well at times. I thought there was some where his hit the ball in his receiver's hands and they just didn't make a play for him. A couple times. So, ugly game, 5 field goals in the NFL is something, but only up from here.
Talking about Dak
That is his 13th straight win against the Giants. It's kind of insane to think about that. I don't know if I've ever seen a longer win streak. I've been watching football since the mid 80s. I'm old. So I don't know if I've seen a guy dominate a team like he has. Also, on the other side of the ball, Micah Parsons with a high ankle sprain, the number one linebacker for them. So it's just an ugly game altogether. And we've also seen some ugly news to kick off week 4. Davante Adams. That's why I'm wearing my throwback Tim Brown representing the Raiders tonight, because the biggest news of the day is Davante Adams is out with a hamstring injury. He hurt it yesterday in practice on Thursday, didn't practice today. What do you think about this with Davante Adams being out?
Not sure that the Raiders are really a team right now that can afford to lose guys. So them losing Davante Adams on that offense, they've got Gardner Minshew playing quarterback, which Antonio Pierce hadn't even committed to him. It seemed like after the last game, he may be on thin ice there, maybe Aiden O'Connell time. So I'm a Colts fan, Colts season ticket holder here in Indy. So I saw a lot of Gardner Minshew last year, and I'm rooting for him. Hope he does well, but that's a tough loss for the Raiders. Big shakeup here, and normally in fantasy, you lose a big name like that, you want to go get the guy that's replacing him. Maybe get some volume, some targets. I don't really know that there's much value to be had in that Raiders offense right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're very desperate and you don't have a flex, Jacoby Myers might be somebody you look at. You got to take a look at who you have. He's definitely going to get a lot of targets. Brock Bowers, though, probably will be the biggest beneficiary of that to Davante Adams. Hopefully, this is only a 1-week thing, but we see with hamstrings, it could be very tough to know what's going to happen. And today, if you haven't heard, today on Friday at practice, I don't know how these guys are hurting themselves in practice. Kittle last week, Davante Adams yesterday, Chris Olave today hurt his hamstring. Now he's questionable to play. We're going to be talking about later. You have a decision in the start-sit segment. We're going to be talking about Derek Carr, but Chris Olave out with not out, questionable with a hamstring, but you never like seeing a guy get injured on Friday, 2 days before the game.
No, definitely not. Not when you've game planned all week. I think Chris Olave, he's not a gadget player, not a bit player. He's probably been a big part of that game plan. Same with Kamara. We'll see as well too. Two big offensive weapons there for the Saints, and an offense that really through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season had been humming along. Right, we had some people saying maybe Derek Carr's MVP candidate after the first 2 weeks. So they lose Olave. I would say move up Rashid Shaheed if you've got him. He could be a beneficiary this week. I have to go a little bit further down on the Saints depth chart because I know they have Kendre Miller, who they thought was going to be their backup's been injured at running back. So if you're really, really thin at running back, this may be an opportunity. There may be a guy out there, I'll have to check to see who their third, fourth string is that may get some carries this week if you really need a running back bad.
Yeah, the key guy to pick up would be Jamal Williams. If you have Kamara, if you don't have Kamara, no reason to pick up Jamal Williams. He might play, if Kamara is out, then everyone will run out and get him. But if you are the Kamara owner and you have a guy on the end of your bench that you're just not going to need, do that for yourself, for your own sanity, that if Kamara at 11:30 a.m. is announced out, that you just could slide Jamal Williams into that spot and he's going to get that workload. So as you said, the Saints, after 2 weeks, had scored 91 points last week, didn't do so well. And now this week with two of their biggest stars, both questionable, going to be very interesting. Moving along to two quarterbacks that we talked about last week, both of them were questionable. Justin Herbert played last week. Jordan Love did not play. Now it kind of looks like the other way around where Jordan Love, they've called him questionable. He's practiced in a limited fashion all 3 days this week. I think he's going to play. I think they're just calling him questionable because obviously playing against the division rival Minnesota Vikings, they don't want to give their hand up that their star quarterback is back. But I would imagine he's going to be back, and that's obviously going to be a huge boost for Jaden Reed and the other wide receivers there. And on the other hand, you could talk about both of these, Curtis. Justin Herbert, these guys have a bye. The Chargers have a bye in week 5. I don't know why they would put him back out there after getting re-injuring that high ankle sprain. He's been heavily bandaged in that. Why put him out there? when you got to bye next week, just take the loss. You're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. Just let it be and come back in week 6 with a fresh Herbert. That's my take on it. What do you think, Curtis?
Yeah, I agree there. It's kind of, you've got two franchises that have kind of handled it in 180, a 180-degree difference with the two quarterbacks, right? Jordan Love gets banged up at the end of the Philadelphia game, week 1. They give him some time off, have let him rest, recuperate. Got a couple good performances out of Malik Willis in his absence, which is not something I thought would have happened. So I'm sure, they paid Jordan Love all that money, right? They gave him $250 million or whatever in the offseason guaranteed. Probably want some ROI, but you also don't want to sink that deal 4 weeks into it. So if they go, again, big game this week against the Vikings, like you said, if Vikings come in 3-0, probably the hottest team in the NFL here, rolling a little bit with Sam Darnold. And so big division game for him. It'd be interesting to see Jordan Love out there. He's kind of got a plethora of weapons. They've got a really nice wide receiver room. So move those guys up if Love comes back healthy. And again, to kind of reiterate what you said, the Chargers, not only they have injuries to Herbert, I said Joe Alt's going to be out, the tackle that they drafted. I was looking through Adam Schefter's tweets earlier. I think he had about 10 names on the Chargers that are questionable or out this week. Like you said, you got the bye coming up. You don't want to ruin your season in week 3, right? So even if you take the loss to the Chargers or to the Chiefs this week, you're the Chargers. Call up some practice squad guys. Go out there, get the game, get healthy. Come back in week 5.
I know. Even if they were 100% healthy, they might not beat the Chiefs. So, just mail it in, get ready for week 6 is what I would do if I was the Chargers GM or front office member. But another team that has a week 5 bye that may roll out one of these guys is the Philadelphia Eagles. They have their 2-star wide receivers, both hurt. Devontae Smith with a nasty concussion. If you saw the play, he got hit by like 3 dudes. His helmet flew off. Really scary play. I'm happy he's taking a week off as a concussion. He'll be ready to roll after the bye in week 6, no doubt about that. But A.J. Brown with this hamstring, we've talked about at the beginning of the show already, 2 wide receivers with hamstring injuries. Devontae Adams out with the 1, and Chris Olave questionable. Now we got A.J. Brown questionable with a hamstring. He has missed the last 2 weeks with this injury. So I'm just ready to get him back. I have him on a bunch of my teams. I don't know what your take is. Do you want A.J. Brown to play this week? I do. And, he's going into the bye. I'd rather see him play and get out there and see if he has some explosive plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay this is.
Yeah, I would monitor it and just see. I think this is one where you probably move up Saquon Barkley, knowing that Saquon's a pretty dynamic running back, right? And you've got the injuries to Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. So come in, you're going to see, probably some dump-offs, a lot more handoffs to Saquon. Maybe they'll get him going in the passing game. It's really tough because these lower body injuries, you can see them just linger forever, right? So if a team sits a guy, and then especially with the bye coming up, if you can kind of get a 2-for-1, if you will, if you sit a guy, I think it's hard to turn down, especially if you like the guys on the depth chart below. But really tough situation for the Eagles if you're going to be without Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Something we'll get to that does move up another guy, though, that I like on their offense. We'll get to a little bit later in the show. But I do think there could be opportunities if A.J. Brown doesn't go.
And that's Dallas Goedert. We're going to be talking about him in the start-sit segment. If you guys have any comments, if you guys have start-sit questions, please drop them in the chat. We're going to be talking about those later in the show. And, yeah, for me, if you don't have Goddard, do not take a look. I mean, if you're really desperate, you could try to get Jahan Dotson. I tried him a couple weeks ago. That did not work out for me. Paris Campbell, also another one you could look at. But, it's really just going to, as you said, it's going to be Barkley and Goddard probably getting about 80% of the targets on that squad if A.J. Brown is out. And as we move to another wide receiver, a big-time wide receiver that's also questionable this week, Deebo Samuel. This is wild that he is questionable when he got hurt with this calf injury week before last. They said he was going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. Boom, he's back. They said Shanahan was like, oh, these guys are just, amazing athletes that they can heal this quickly. it sounds like he's going to play. I mean, but maybe they hold him out. I don't know. We'll see. But who is good to go is George Kittle here with the hamstring, who popped up last week with that hamstring on a Thursday practice. So good to see that that was not a major issue and he only missed 1 week.
Right. Yeah. And I was going to say, in his absence, Jawan Jennings had a career game kind of right behind it. So one of those things where, it's probably unfortunate if you picked up Jawan Jennings on waiver wire this week, hoping you were going to get another big game out of him if he was available. I got him. I was able to snag him in 1 or 2 leagues after last week's game. So I think, I don't know. We'll see. I would imagine if Debo's good to go, they'll roll him out there. The 49ers are also kind of banged up when you look at their injury report as well. Obviously, you got CMC, which who knows what's going on with him. We'll see when we see him back. Kittle, it seems like every single injury report we've had down here said hamstring. So he's another one. Tweaked it in practice last week. Didn't go against the Patriots. Sounds like he's going to go. I always get nervous playing a guy that comes into the game with a lower body injury because it takes one play, a flare up, then you're getting a goose egg there from a key player.
Yeah, I had Jawan Jennings. I started him last week in my my college friends league, and I mean 46.5 points. I couldn't believe it as a flex. Last week I said, and I put it out there on all my socials, I said, if you need somebody, go to your waiver wire and pick up Jawan Jennings. I said it on this show last week. So stay around because who knows what I'm going to say. I don't think I'll ever say a guy who pick up your waiver wire and gets 46.5 points, but maybe one more time for the rest of the year, I'll have something like this. And my guy this week actually is a guy on the screen right now, another wide receiver who is good to go after battling a hip injury, Rome Odunze. I'm going to talk a little bit about him later when I give out my daily fantasy lineup. And questionable Keenan Allen with this heel. He's been battling this heel injury since the preseason, but they say he's back. He's been practicing this week. So seems like Keenan Allen's going to be back. It seems like Caleb Williams, we're going to talk a little bit about Caleb Williams a little bit later in the start-sit segment. Seems like he's going to have all three of his weapons, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore this week.
Yeah, it looks like it. He played against the Colts last week, didn't look good in that game. Had some nice throws, also had some throws where you're just like, what are you doing, man? So I think getting Keenan Allen back will be kind of a steadying force for him. I don't know what kind of fantasy impact Keenan Allen will have long term. I do get a little worried about him. He seems like a guy who's been banged up over his career, and time only goes one way. So be interesting to see how he plays. But I think he's probably a solid flex option if he's healthy. He's going to have some weeks where he's pretty playable. Yeah,
I'll tell you this, right? They're playing home to the Rams, and the Rams are the third worst this year to wide receivers, as we talked about in the last segment there. Jawan Jennings had those 46.5 points against the Rams. So I think one or two of these guys may go off, and maybe it's Keenan Allen, maybe it's DJ Moore, maybe it's Rome Odunze, but I think one of those three are going to have a pretty big day. But who's not going to have a big day is Tank Dell. He is out with ribs. They've been saying this all week that he's out, so no surprise that today they say he's out for this week. But good news on that side is Nico Collins is good to go. He does not get an injury designation with this hamstring that popped up. Another hamstring for another wide receiver that was picked in the top 25, 30 picks. Nico Collins, he is good to go this week, and they have a very nice matchup this week versus Jacksonville, who's 8th worst in the league against wide receivers, fantasy-wise, and Diggs. Nico Collins, I think both are good daily plays. If you got them on your teams, you got to play them.
Yeah, it seems like, too, if any team in the NFL can afford injuries to the wide receiver spot, it's the Texans. So it seems like anytime you look at their depth chart, they just have guys down there, including John Mechie, who hasn't really gotten a chance yet. Got drafted, has an interesting backstory, had been diagnosed, had a cancer diagnosis shortly after getting drafted. And so he's still working his way back. So they might even have another wide receiver in the mix later this year that is a dynamic force. So, it's unfortunate as a Colts fan. Like I said, I hate to see the Texans doing well. I hate to see them with all their weapons. But I think really they're one of those teams you can't go wrong. If you're kind of short on the roster, you're looking for a flex guy. Texans wide receivers usually on a weekly basis, you can probably find some value there.
Yeah, I think Stroud is going to have a very nice game this week against Jacksonville. Jacksonville obviously just got destroyed by Buffalo on Monday Night Football. So I'll talk a little bit about that later in my daily lineup about how Jacksonville has just been not very good and Houston defense has been looking pretty good. So I'll give you a quick sneak peek that the Houston defense is my daily play this week as Jacksonville comes into town there. But when we talk more about Houston, a lot about the Houston Texans, a lot of injuries, right? Joe Mixon had that horrible hip drop tackle, missed last week, but they say he might be back. He's questionable now after being doubtful last week. He got in a limited practice today. He might be the guy. Dameon Pierce is out. So I know everyone ran out. A lot of people ran out and got Cam Akers off of their waiver wire. He might not be the guy anymore. You might have to drop him if they say Joe Mixon is playing this week.
Yeah, I would imagine if Joe Mixon is good to go, then he's going to be out there for most of the snaps. I mean, you brought up a couple names there. Cam Akers, Dameon Pierce, those are kind of the fantasy football ghosts of bust past, right, of the drafts in recent years where those guys have had a lot of hype coming into the season and not really lived up to it. So, again, like you said, though, too, the Jaguars haven't played very well. They've lost, 8 games in a row now, dating back to last season. Trevor Lawrence looks like a guy who might get benched at some point. And so I think even Doug Peterson had been a little hesitant to say that he was the starting quarterback, indefinitely, which he's got Mac Jones behind him. So he probably has some security there being the quarterback, and he's got a big contract. But what can you do? I say all that to say, really, that whoever the Texans running back is might get some workload here because they're going to be running. They may be in a situation where they're up big, running the ball late, just milking the clock. So if Mixon's a go, you got to start him, I think.
No doubt about it. And, talking about Jacksonville, maybe one of the reasons that Trevor Lawrence has had his security blanket, Evan Ingram, he's out again with his hamstring injury that he pulled during warmups. I mean, guys, I don't understand what's going on with these dudes with their hamstrings getting hurt during practice. And this dude, Evan Ingram, got hurt warming up for the game, hurt his hamstring. So dudes out there, make sure your hamstrings are being stretched. Wide receivers and tight ends out there, because we can't take it anymore. There's just been too many hamstring injuries to these guys. So Evan Ingram out this week. Another big tight end out this week, Trey McBride, though, with a concussion. This one is tough to take. That, a lot of tight ends this year have been hurt, and you didn't hope that this guy, he's been looking pretty good out of all the tight ends that were drafted early in the year. He's at least shown up and, gotten the targets, gotten some catches. It hasn't been that impressive, but he's been at least a solid tight end. He's going to be out this week, and that's going to open up a lot on the Arizona side of the ball. I'm going to talk more about that in my daily fantasy lineup, who I like because of Trey McBride being out, and moving through this because there's just so much injuries to talk about. Another guy who's out, David Njoku, is out again, and he's been out since week 1. Another tight end that's been out with an ankle. He has a lower ankle injury. I don't know. What do you think about all these tight ends, Curtis?
So I say the one in there that being out, Trey McBride, is a terrible loss for the Cardinals because he's kind of been their bona fide second option in the passing game. So obviously you got Marvin Harrison Jr. there who, hey, once they throw him the ball, his game alive. Brenton Strange, though, the backup tight end in Jacksonville, while Evan Ingram's been out, has actually produced in standard scoring right now. He's tight end number 13. So he's been borderline starter material, I guess. If you're in a 12-team league, he's got 8 points the last 2 weeks. So if Evan Ingram's out again and you're streaming tight ends, Brenton Strange might be out there.
I have a trivia question for you, and I got this from the CBS Fantasy Sports podcast, my favorite podcast I listen to for a lot of my information. So I got a trivia question for you. Who has more receiving yards through the season, through 3 weeks? Is it Brenton Strange or Travis Kelce?
Probably Strange, right? Because
he does.
Yeah.
He has 77 yards receiving, and Travis Kelce has 69 yards receiving on the year. So if I asked you this when you were sitting down to your draft at the end of August, and I said, hey, man, I'm going to tell you, Travis Kelce is going to have not as many receiving yards as Brenton Strange. You'd be like, who the hell's Brenton Strange? And everybody picked Travis Kelce at the top, 30, 40 picks of your draft. So this is not to talk too much about tight ends and everything, but Kelce, they say this is the week they're going to get in the ball. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But as we move along, the last injury I think I got here, and we'll talk a little bit about Monday Night Football and how we'll play Monday Night Football. Jaylen Warren is out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We knew this coming into the week that he has this knee injury. Najee Harris looks like he's going to play. Cordero Patterson, if you're really desperate for a flex, he's going to get some work out of the backfield here. So I don't know what you think about Jaylen Warren and this whole Pittsburgh backfield situation.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren's a guy that I've had on my teams a lot over the years. Last couple of years, I've always kind of liked him, thought he was a nice change of pace back to Najee Harris. Obviously, they got Cordero Patterson. They got Calvin Austin as well, too, a wide receiver who's a little bit dynamic. So I'm sure they'll be able to scheme some things up. And then really they've got Justin Fields, who's almost a glorified running back sometimes from the quarterback position. So they're playing like Colts as well, too. Everybody's been able to run on the Colts so far this year for the most part. So I think Pittsburgh will be fine without him this week.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, I think that's why, if you're very desperate, you can – possibly say Cordero Patterson might have a big play that'll make his week. We'll see, because the Colts, their defense has just not been very good against the run and running backs coming out of the backfield. So we'll move to Monday night. For the second week in a row, we have 2 Monday Night Football games. I don't know. Do you know why they're doing this? Have you heard anything about this?
I don't know why they are, to be honest with you. It used to be, I think, again, it was kind of one of those things from a scheduling standpoint. You remember they used to do it like week 1, they would do like a 7:00 game and like a West Coast game. And now we're just getting 2 Monday night games on top of each other. So,
yeah, I guess I just haven't heard. But, yeah, it's fun. I had a lot of fun last week. One game was a blowout, so I was more focused on that Cincinnati Commanders game. I always call them the Redskins. Washington-Cincinnati game was an exciting game last week. So at least we got one good game. But we have a couple of things going about Monday Night Football that we have to plan accordingly. Ken Walker being one of the main guys here. He has had this oblique injury since leaving week 1. They say he's ready for Monday night. He's had 2 limited practices, and he also had a limited practice last Friday. So it looks like he's going to be back, but he's facing the number 1 run defense against fantasy running backs, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, should be. And that's a game I think, like you said, the run defense of the Lions has been pretty good so far this year. But again, you've got 2 teams that got some offensive weapons. So it could be a fun over game if you like points. Could be some scoring there. I think it's one of those. I know they've got Charbonnet behind him, correct, in Seattle. So he would be the other option. I don't know if, again, running backs kind of coming off injuries. I tend to give it a week. I don't necessarily plug him in. I don't think Ken Walker's a plug and play for me this week.
Yeah, I'm having trouble, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later in my start question I have for the week. I have Ken Walker on Monday night, so we're going to talk more about that. Another one on Monday night, though, that looks good to go, Sam Laporta. We talked about injuries to tight ends. People were freaking out. This is the Friday Football Freakout. My name is Saratoga Slim, a.k.a. Dad Rap, and I'm with Curtis Manlow of Dudes After Dark. We're After Dark. We're talking fantasy football, so welcome to the show. Sam Laporta. Oh, my God, we're like half an hour into the show, and we haven't even got through all the injuries. This is insane. Sam Laporta, he's ready to go. He has an ankle. People were freaking out about that earlier in the week, so good to see a tight end is actually going to play.
Right. Yeah, get one guy back in the mix here. So hopefully we can start getting some tight end production. I did see that Brandon Audrey, the much maligned kicker from the Cowboys the other night, that ruined some people's spreads because he missed a 60-yard field goal or whatever there at the end of the game. Did see that right now he would qualify as tight end one if he was tight end eligible in fantasy in most standard scoring leagues, just off his kicking points. So hopefully Sam Laporta can come back and maybe spice up this tight end position for us.
Yeah, I think, that's going to be a fun game. The Lions versus the 3-0 Seahawks on Monday Night Football. Another Monday Night Football game. Will we see Tyler Snoop Huntley start for the Dolphins on Monday night versus the Titans in Miami? Hey, I hope he does because I got Waddle on a few teams. I benched him last week. I think I'm going to bench him again this week, but I would not mind seeing Snoop Huntley out there. He was pretty decent when he's backed up Lamar Jackson a couple years back. So seeing him out there, I think that's could be only a good thing because I watched a little bit of that Skylar Thompson last week, and it was not good. He got hurt, and they brought in, the guy from the Jets that they had last year, Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle. I think it's Tim Boyle.
Oh, Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle.
Yes. Not Mike Boyle. No, that's another guy. Mike White. But yeah, they had Tim. They actually, you know what? If the Dolphins had kept Mike White, that might be the best guy they would have had. I think they cut him earlier in the preseason. Yeah. But yeah, they had Tim Boyle come in. He didn't do much. So, hey, man, Tyler Huntley, until they get Tua back from this concussion, maybe he shows up on Monday night and puts in a good outing. I mean, the Titans defense has actually looked pretty good this season now.
Yeah, I would think, again, there's a lot of 2 quarterback leagues out there now. So, if you're trying to, and quarterbacks are usually tough to come by. Every 2 quarterback league I play in, you don't really have options to pick up people on the waiver wire, pick up free agency. You got to be a little creative. So if you're playing 2 QB leagues, even if Snoop Huntley's not going to go Monday night, pick him up. Then you might have him later on down the line. He did make the Pro Bowl one year as an alternate when he was with Baltimore, but the Miami offense should be plug and play if they can just get competent quarterback play. A lot of points to be had.
Yeah, I'm worried about this week, against the Titans. I think the Titans defense has been pretty stout. And I agree to a guy I know, Jared Welch, who was my guest on my first show, the Friday Football Freak. We all know Jared of the Racing Dudes. He says, how is Skyler even in the NFL so bad? Yeah, I mean, he had Tyreek open on a few plays and literally missed him, threw him short by 5 yards. I was like, what is going on here? So yeah, I mean, anything's better than him. So hopefully Tyler Huntley gets to start. And as a reminder, though, I've been telling people about some of the buys next week. We're going to look forward a little bit. I said you wanted to talk about some guys that pick off waivers. Hey, next week, the buys do start. So this is the time of the season to start thinking about, okay, I got to think ahead to next week. I'm going to have a quarterback out. Who's my backup quarterback? Who can I pick up right now to get myself ready 1 week in advance for those buys? So please look at your team, know who your lines are, your Chargers, your Eagles, and your Titans, and start planning now because that's how you win in fantasy football is thinking 1 week ahead. So you said you had a couple of guys you were thinking about for waiver wire pickups. Get them now before they're gone.
Yeah, so I had a couple guys here, and like you said, usually with the bottom of my roster in a lot of these leagues, especially deeper leagues, I try to get guys that, maybe aren't going to get a lot of points or play a lot right now, but guys that have the potential to become starters or dynamic fantasy players for you later down the line. So one guy that I've been kind of focusing on, he's available in about 50% of leagues right now, which is higher than I thought it would be. But Bucky Irving, running back number 2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. So Rachaad White, their starters, averaging 2.1 yards per carry so far this year. Even coming into this year, he had been under 4 yards per carry for his career. So not a great number. Irving only has 25 carries, but he's averaging over 6 yards per carry at the moment. And then yards after contact, Irving is at 4 yards versus Rachaad White being at 2.6. They've already started to kind of decrease Rachaad White's usage in the run game. I think it was last week Rachaad White played more snaps, but Bucky Irving got 51% of their carries or their handoffs. So they've already made a transition here in their offense to where they're starting to use him as a running back more, and then Rachaad White more in the passing game. So chance out there to add him.
I'm going to tell you something about Bucky Irvin, and this goes with the theme of the night so far. Bucky Irvin is questionable. And what do you think injury he has?
Probably a hamstring.
He does. He has a hamstring injury. So these guys with these hamstring injuries, but Bucky Irvin, he's questionable with a hamstring injury, and I agree. There's some guys right now that could lose their jobs. The one guy I'm going to give out, I picked him up in my big money league. I was so happy to get him because my running backs there are hurting after losing Pacheco, is Roschon Johnson on the Chicago Bears. So that's my guy to go out and get right now. If you go to your waiver wire, look up Roschon Johnson. They say he's going to get more work. He's a key guy to go and pick up right now. But as I said, get ready for your buys. Take a look at your team and understand Who's off next week? So I'll say it again. The Lions. You got Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery, Amon-Ra. You got some big names on that team. Chargers not, maybe Dobbins. You got to get a replacement for Eagles. You got the big-time wide receivers and obviously Saquon, and everyone's starting Hurts. And the Titans, you got some guys, Pollard, and, if you're starting Ridley or Hopkins. So if you got those guys on your team, make sure you have a plan for next week. But that's week 5. This is week 4, and we're talking about starts and sits. So put your starts and sits questions in the chat. We'll bring them up on the screen. I'm going to start off with one that Curtis has on his team. And please, if you got a very strong opinion about this, also put it in the chat. This is going to be Derek Carr versus Caleb Williams. Talk a little bit about what you're going through in your mind with this decision, Curtis.
Yeah, so originally I had kind of swung for the fences in the draft. I was the last team in this league to pick a quarterback. Ended up with Caleb Williams. Just thought, hey, first pick overall, Caleb, dynamic thrower. I thought he would look a little better in the NFL than he has thus far. Obviously, that hasn't been the case. After week 2, I ended up picking up Derek Carr. Surprise, surprise, I had some injuries in my bench. So went out, got another quarterback to kind of bridge the gap. Then started Derek Carr last week. He got me 7 points, but I still won the game. So the rest of my team's pretty stacked. It's just trying to figure out the quarterback position. Obviously, looking in the rearview mirror a little bit here, Carr's had a better start to the season. He's averaging about 18 points a game in standard scoring leagues, as opposed to Caleb, who's only averaging about 12. But again, you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show. I think from a matchup standpoint, Caleb Williams might have a little bit better of a matchup versus the LA Rams this week. Also has, like you said they've been the 3rd best defense to wide receivers, right? So naturally a little bit of an angle there in the passing game. Ram just gave up 46 points to Jawan Jennings. So I like Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore a little bit better than those guys. And I think Caleb Williams has the rushing upside here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Caleb Williams at home. I think we did have somebody in. Rob N said, going to be windy in Chicago. It is a windy city after all. So, Rob, please let us know if you have a weather forecast. I think anytime you see it over 20, 30 mile per hour wind gusts, that's when you start worrying about wind in a game. So, Rob, if you hear us out there, tell us what the weather forecast is out there. But for me, I think I would go with Caleb Williams. He looked very good last week. Finally got his feet under him, so to speak. Was really hooking up with Roma Dunze. He's going to get back Keenan Allen. And obviously, if Carr doesn't have Olave out there, he's going to lose his number 1 target. So that's going to be tough. Going into Atlanta, hey, Atlanta, they're kind of a middle of the pack defense in my mind. But it's always tough when you have those division rivalries. They know each other so well sometimes that, sometimes they end up in being lower scoring games. Your other start sit for the week is a really interesting one with Kittle coming back for the 49ers. You said earlier, you're worried about guys that come back with a hamstring that they could flare up during the game. And then you got Dallas Goedert, who had the biggest game. I think him and Likely probably had Isaiah Likely in week 1, and Dallas Goedert last week had the biggest games for tight ends so far this season. He had the biggest game, 10 for 170. A huge game. Obviously, no Devontae Smith, so he's going to get targeted a lot, even if A.J. Brown is playing. What are you thinking about this one, Curtis? This is your team talking about.
Yeah, so I'm leaning Goddard right now. You get Kittle coming back, right? Like I said, I tend to fade away from guys that are coming back off of injury. That first week back with Kittle, especially as banged up as the 49ers have been, they probably wouldn't want to take chances. So even if he tweaks it a little bit, I think that may kind of end the rest of his day, so to speak. So I'm moving Goddard up big time, especially with the injuries to Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. I really think that offense is going to go through Goddard and Saquon this week. Probably get some design runs from Jalen Hurts as well, too. But right now, leaning Goddard and kind of using him as my tight end in any league that I have him in. It's funny, I play in a league where me and my fiance co-manage a team, and it's our family league. And we had Goddard a couple of years ago, and he let us down a lot. So she absolutely hates him. So he's a tough sell for me in that league, but anywhere else.
Yeah, he was awesome, and then he wasn't good. Now he's back again, but he's always had it. I think he was injured a lot for a couple of years there. He had a couple of injuries on and off. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Goddard in this one. Obviously, with Kittle coming back off the hamstring, I'm a little bit worried about re-injury. And if Debo's back, maybe he even plays, third, fourth fiddle in that passing game with Jawan Jennings with such a huge breakout game. We do have a start-sit question from Paolo Veldick. In the chat, Deontay Johnson or DJ Moore? We just talked about Chicago. If it's going to be windy there, the Rams secondary obviously has been chewed up all year long, especially last week. I keep on talking about Jawan Jennings and the 46.5 points he had against them. I really like DJ Moore in this spot. And Deontay Johnson obviously had the breakout game, became a top 15 receiver PPR-wise last week with Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, taking over for the Carolina Panthers. They're playing at home to the Cincinnati Bengals, who Jaden Daniels had a pretty nice game on Monday Night Football. Terry McLaurin kind of broke out against them. So I think both of these guys are pretty good. The one thing, though, once again, Deontay Johnson is questionable coming into the game with a groin injury. Groins are tough. Those could flare up too during games. So with that being said, I would lean DJ Moore in this spot. But obviously, if Deontay Johnson, it's going to be a high-scoring game. You're taking a look at that Bengals-Panthers games and over under 47.5. And I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. So Deontay, pretty good. If you could get both of them in your lineup, I would try. But I would lean towards DJ Moore in this spot.
Yeah, and that my problem is I just have a hard time trusting anybody related to the Carolina Panthers offense at the moment. So even though you got Andy Dalton come in last week, had the big game, he was the first quarterback to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game this season. So a little bit of an Andy Dalton renaissance there in Carolina. I'm still going to be kind of buyer beware until we get another week of it or so. I think the one thing, with DJ Moore, why I would lean DJ Moore in this situation, for all intents and purposes, he is the Bears' best player on offense. I think, the offense probably goes through him. They've struggled running the ball, so it seems like, they have plays drawn up to specifically get DJ Moore the ball on a weekly basis. So I would take my chances with DJ Moore. If Deontay Johnson has another double-digit week, then I'll move him up. I want to see Andy Dalton do it one more time before I'm buying in.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to jump in on the Carolina. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Carolina offense in my daily lineup. Another one, flex choice between Jacoby Myers or Cam Akers. This is assuming Mixon is out. Travis says it's disgusting. Hey, obviously, if Mixon is out, I think you roll with Cam Akers in this spot. But if Mixon is playing, as we said, if you are desperate with Devontae Adams out, hey, Jacoby Myers, you could do a lot worse. He's going to get at least 8 targets. Imagine what they do with it at that point. But, yeah, it's going to be him and Brock Bowers getting probably 80% of the targets in that offense. The Raiders' offense is disgusting. They're playing at home against the Browns, and the Browns – pretty good defense, so I'm not expecting Jacoby Myers to go off, but 5 for 50 is probably a pretty, if you're playing PPR, he should be able to get you 10 points in a PPR if he gets 5 for 50, and that's probably better than what Akers does if Mixon's playing.
Yeah. If Mixon's out, definitely taking Akers in this situation. Just like I said, I think the Jaguars are a football team that's really struggling. Texans probably going to get plenty of carries here late to kind of salt the game away or take some time off the clock. Also, C.J. Stroud, they don't really do any design runs with C.J. Stroud. He's not a running quarterback, so you get the goal line carries factor there for Akers as well. So I would lean Akers. Again, the Raiders are just kind of one of those teams that's really hard for me outside of Brock Bowers this week to be interested in any offensive player they have.
Definitely hear you. And we'll finish off the start sit segment with the one I got. Okay, this is going to be like every hour I got to make a decision. So at 11:30 a.m., if A.J. Brown's playing, I'm playing him. Obviously, if he's not playing, I'm going to have to play Jawan Jennings no matter what happens with Debo. My question is, if I know Kenneth Walker's playing Monday night and I know Debo's back and AJ plays, then I have my flex spot. Do I play Jawan Jennings or Kenneth Walker if Debo is back? What do you think, Curtis?
So if the 49ers are full go, then I think you almost just have to take your chance and roll it with Kenneth Walker and just see at least. I think Kenneth Walker, we'll see what kind of workload he's going to get. I'd be monitoring that. Sometimes you got to follow the beat reporters on X or Twitter, if you will, and see what the workload's going to be. But right now I would lean towards Kenneth Walker. It does, the 49ers games that I've seen this year, even when they've been at full strength, they have called some plays and some passes for Jawan Jennings. So he does have a regular role in the offense. Also depends on your matchup. I think, if you're just trying to look for a few guaranteed points, depending on how it's gone for you so far, you take Jawan Jennings. If you're going for upside, I'd take a shot with Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I think Jawan Jennings, he can't have that many points and then just disappear off the face of the earth. He's still going to be the third wide receiver, and Debo, maybe they don't give him a full workload first week back, but we'll see. Obviously, following the beat reporters, you never know. It's so difficult with these guys when they're coming back from injuries, and it's just mind-boggling to think of all these injuries and all of these different configurations with A.J. Brown coming back, maybe, and then if Debo comes back and Kenneth Walker comes back, and you got to kind of figure out. But that's why we're here on the Friday Football Freakout. My name is Saratoga Slim. At Dad Rap Music. I'm rapping now also, so check out my raps. I'm rapping about football. People really loving it. My fantasy football raps. So check me out over there. And we do have one more start sit before we leave. This is a long one. I have a choice between Quentin Johnson. I guess that's Quentin Johnson on the San Diego Chargers or LA Chargers. Yoshivas to replace Adams. So I have Rice and London as my 1 and 2. That's a good start. So between two, who you like? I'm falling towards Yoshivas over Quentin Johnson. Yeah, obviously, another thing you got to look at if Herbert's playing, if they got Easton Stick or whoever the other guy is. Who's the other guy?
Taylor Heineke?
Yeah, Heineke or Stick. I guess Heineke came in last week. Or Stick. I don't know who comes in. But, if they got one of those two guys, Quentin Johnson's probably not a play. So I would lean Yoshivas there because, this Panthers defense is really horrible, and Yoshivas just seems to get touchdowns every week. He's been a touchdown machine in that offense. So I guess you just play Yoshivas and hope he scores a TD. But, yeah, I would also go and take a look at some of your waiver wire. I know I'm going to be talking about a guy in the daily fantasy. I won't ruin it. Michael Wilson for the Cardinals. See if he's out there. He's a good play to pick up this week. I don't know. You have anything else to say about this?
So I actually have Yoshivas he's a guy that I've added in some of my deeper leagues the last couple of weeks. I do think he's a sleepier or kind of a sleeper for later on down the road. Even, as you said, with buys coming up. So T. Higgins comes back last week. The Bengals still played Yoshivas 77% of their snaps, and he's had at least 4 targets in every game, and they give him targets in the red zone. So really kind of reminds me, of years past, you've got Joe Burrow, who's kind of a more old school passer, right? Kind of more of a quarterback in the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning mold, as opposed to guys now are a little more dynamic, being mobile. But Yoshivas is kind of that slot receiver for him that we've seen, and kind of his trusted security blanket, if you will. So I think he's a guy that he's going to get you. His ceiling's probably low double-digit points each week, but I think there's a pretty high floor with him as well too. So. I think you could do worse for depth options. It saves you from having to start Johan Dotson.
If A.J. Brown's out, maybe roll the dice with Dotson. But, I think Yoshivas has been scoring, so you could roll with that. And I'm going to roll into the next segment, which is the daily fantasy lineup. I've been doing these each week, and they've been horrible, so I apologize to anyone who's tried to play my lineups. They've been really bad and been a jinx to a lot of players. I said Rashid Shaheed last week. He had a donut. 2 weeks back, I said play Cooper Kupp and Pacheco, and they both left in walking boots. So this segment has been a horrible segment. But what did you tell me when I said I'm not going to do a daily lineup this week?
You're due now. You're due.
Now I'm due. Now I'm due. So this is the lineup to play. I feel good about this one. And we're going to start off with Kyler Murray. Hey, man, I talk about the Washington Commanders. Their secondary is disgusting. They have given up on average 263 yards passing and 3 TDs per game last week to Joe Burrow. had his breakout game with 324 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Kyler Murray is third in the league in rushing for quarterbacks with 161 yards on the year. He's packed for 635 yards. So he's been doing good. I like Kyler Murray. I have him on one of my teams, and I'm happy with that pick. This is the week that he might just explode. And the man, my number one wide receiver, actually my number 2 wide receiver by salary here is Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, this Washington secondary, as I said, has been horrible. Jamar Chase, 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns last week. The week before that, Malik Neighbors went off for 10 for 127 and a touchdown. In week 1, they gave up 13 catches for 144 yards and 3 touchdowns combined to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So with that, I'm stacking Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison. And since the Washington Commanders secondary is so bad, and we've seen Yoshivis get a touchdown last week against them, I'm rolling the dice with Michael Willis. Well, I'm sorry, I said his name wrong. Michael Wilson, $4,200. Hey, man, when you play these DraftKings, sometimes you got to go bargain basement value. And that's what Michael Wilson is here, playing against the worst secondary passing-wise against fantasy wide receivers this year. The Commanders have been horrible. And Michael Wilson really with 9 targets, 8 for 64 last week. No Trey McBride. We talked about that in the opening segment. I think Michael Wilson is going to do some damage to the Washington Commanders. What you think about that?
Yeah, hey, I like it. I haven't dabbled too much in daily fantasy over the years, but not since college anyway. And then I found out, there's an art to it, and you kind of have to get a little strategic with it. But I like your thinking here, right? You kind of got to go all in. You got to try and be a little creative, right? You got to try and zig where everybody else is zagging. So, get Michael Wilson, who probably won't be high ownership this week, and you're just betting on the Cardinals to go off. So, what I kind of like doing sometimes every Sunday is like I'll take $1 or $2 and just make touchdown score parlays with my fantasy teams, with all the guys on my fantasy team. Because hey, every now and then you get your fantasy team to go off. I think you do the Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson anytime touchdown score parlay there. That might pay a little bit on Sunday if you hit it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been horrible. I mean, you take a look at Arizona. They've just been Arizona's been good, and, I mean, Washington just not good. But when I talk about Washington, though, sometimes when I do this, I see a high-scoring game here. As I said, this game, I don't know, I talked about a different game, but 49.5 is the under and over for this Washington at Arizona game. And when I see a high-scoring game, I think I want somebody on the other side of the ball. And in this case, Brian Robinson Jr., one of the injuries we did not talk about in the opening segment, Austin Eckler, who probably would have been the number 1 guy you would have talked about a few years ago if he was out. He is out, and Brian Robinson Jr. is going to get, 90% of the snaps this week. I mean, he's going to be on the field as much as they can get him on the field. So he's going to get a tremendous workload. He's going to be getting some of those passing downs that Austin Eckler usually gets. So he's going to be out there in a high-scoring game. You want a guy on the field coming back the other way. He's going to get opportunities. The Arizona defense has not been that great, so I feel like Brian Robinson Jr. is just going to – he's going to get his. He's going to get plenty of opportunity to get his.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get Brian Robinson Jr. as like my RB3 in a lot of leagues. So RB2, RB3 in some drafts. So I love me some Brian Robinson Jr.
Nice.
Obviously, tough guy too. All the adversities had to come through where he had the incident his rookie year where he was, robbed and then shot and then was on the football field like a week later. So
yeah.
He's a tough guy.
One of the coolest things when you talk about rap and football, well, he came back after getting shot. He came out onto the field to 50 cents, many men. Many men. So he came back on the field. That's why I like this guy, Brian Robinson. And also, that Arizona defense last week gave up 188 yards combined on the ground to Montgomery and Gibbs. So, I mean, he is Montgomery and Gibbs. He's going to get all the work this week. So 188 yards rushing would be pretty nice. And they might have to keep the ball on the ground. I mean, Jaden Daniels obviously looked great last week, but, you want to keep that ball on the road out of Kyler Murray's hands. Another game, I'm talking about my other running back here, Chuba Hubbard, came out. And I know you said you don't want to be investing too much in the Carolina Panthers, so you could push back on this one. But another high-scoring game where I got Chuba Hubbard on the Chuba Hubbard. I like calling him Chuba. Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers came out with a big game last week when Andy Dalton was the first week of his starting campaign for the Carolina Panthers. He had 21 carries for 114 yards, and he also had 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. So getting those catches is key. If they are trailing possibly against Arizona, he's going to get tons of work. And Cincinnati, hey, I mean, last week they only gave up 68 yards combined to Eckler and Robinson, but I think Chuba's going to get the work in a 47.5 under and over game. On the other side of the ball, I like Jamar Chase. Hey, I just think the Carolina Panthers defense is not much, and Chase really had his coming out party on Monday Night Football, so he's a stud. With this lineup, I went cheap in a few spots, so I could get Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison, 2 top wide receiver ones in this lineup. That's what I like to do sometimes. This is a daily tournament play that I'm looking at for the Sunday main slate, and my tight end is going to be Mike Gesicki for $3,500. I mean, very cheap play. That made me help me afford other guys that are higher priced here, and I just think, he's been getting work even with T. Higgins back last week. We talked about Yeshivas getting the touchdowns, but when you're looking at tight ends, you just want a guy that's going to get you 4 for 50, and that's what I'm hoping Gesicki gets, and maybe he gets a TD.
Yeah, and I think Chuba Hubbard is a nice little sneaky play here. You get a Bengals defense that isn't very good, or at least hasn't looked very good through 3 weeks. Also, Chuba Hubbard averaging over 5 yards per carry on the season, so he's got 9 catches across his last 2 games as well. So he basically has 40 touches between rushes and catches over the last 2 games, and then comes out, had the 100-yard game last week against Las Vegas. Comes in to a spot here with Cincinnati, and then also, Carolina. We'll see what the weather holds up there. How it holds up. It's North Carolina's got a hurricane going through right now, so if there's some weather. If there's some weather, could very much be a ground and pound game there in Carolina, and all of a sudden, Chuba Hubbard becomes good. I could see him being, outside chance of being RB1 this weekend with some plays.
Yes, thank you for that reminder on the hurricane. Our thoughts go out to everybody that's dealing with the hurricane down there. I know North Carolina is getting hit hard, so we'll see what happens with that Carolina game. Keep your eyes on that situation, fantasy-wise, but obviously – very bad situation down there, very dangerous. A lot of deaths, horrible to see these hurricanes hitting the South like that. But back to the action and Rome Odunze. All right, my man Jared Welch here. He sat Rome last week and starting him this week. So do yourself a favor and don't, because he definitely will get me like 3 points. So I wrote this lineup out before I saw this. Rome Odunze is my flex. So, Jared, if you're still listening, this is a double whammy on this dude. He came in, as you see, he has a questionable tag. I printed this out last night, and that questionable tag is now off him, as is the questionable tag on Marvin Harrison Jr., who's dealing with a quad injury this week. But Rome Odunze had this hip. The hip is cleared. He's ready to roll. We talked enough about this. The Rams defense and Jawan Jennings, I can't say it enough. The Rams secondary has been horrible. Just hoping Rome Odunze has one of these big 60-yard touchdowns and gets my money back there for the $5,200 amount that I'm putting in for him. And the Texans defense, we talked about how Jacksonville is so bad. And I just saw a couple weeks ago when Caleb Williams came into Houston, he had 7 sacks against them and, just destroyed him. I saw it last Monday night. Trevor Lawrence just got destroyed by the Buffalo Bills on the road also. So I'm thinking like, hey, it might be the same thing here. Houston just destroys Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and so one of the first analogies I learned in horse racing was if you get an undefeated horse, you just keep betting them until they lose. With football here, it's the opposite side sometimes. Trevor Lawrence, just keep fading him until he beats you, right? So he's been 0-8, has a tough matchup here against a division rival, like you said. Houston Texans, you spend all off season trying to figure out how to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Colts, the Tennessee Titans, the teams in your division. So I think it's going to be another uphill matchup for the Jaguars this week, unfortunately.
So one more guy before we leave tonight. Elijah Higgins is a cheap TD dart throw in daily too with McBride out. Yeah, I mean, if you want to throw him in there instead of Michael Wilson in the stack, a good one. And the craziest thing happened. I saw this comment come up, and on my iPad over here, I get notifications from my fantasy leagues and my big money league. Someone just picked up Elijah Higgins as this came up on the comment. So I don't know. Maybe that's a sign that Elijah Higgins is going to go off this week. So I don't know. So on that note, what else you got, Curtis, for this week?
I was going to say that's about it. That's what I had here to touch on. So don't start Anthony Richardson in your leagues. It's been tough for the Colts. Tough sledding here for my beloved Indianapolis Colts. And I made a trade in the fantasy league that I do with the Racing Dudes here, our Discord fantasy league. Made a trade to get Anthony Richardson on my team last week because I needed another quarterback. Rolled the dice with Bryce Young. So now I've kind of put myself in a tough situation here. But we'll see how it plays out with the Colts. But it hasn't looked good so far.
And I apologize. I wanted this to be like a half an hour session, and just getting through the injuries was a half hour. So apologies for everyone that this went over like an hour. But thanks for hanging with us on the Friday Football Freakout. And my name is once again Saratoga Slim. Mike Spector is my real name. Dad Rap Music. So check out my Dad Raps. And you have any tags you want to give out? Anything you're promoting here, Curtis?
I don't, man. I say, I'll give you a shout out though. I love the Tim Brown throwback. You always have a great selection of throwback jerseys every time I see you on. I know you said your dream was to be a successful rapper. When I was a kid, my dream was to dress like the main character from Grand Theft Auto Vice City every day as an adult. So that's
living the dream, man. He's living the dream. And on that note, I don't have a special musical guest this week. My man, Sky Royale, if you're out there, Sky Royale, I'm going to try to get him on the show. This guy, amazing. He's one of the dudes I really want to collaborate with my raps. But on that note, if you don't know about my raps, I'm going to be coming out. I'm going to be dropping a single. This is the first time I've announced it. On November 15th is my target date. I'm working with some really cool people to try to get this done. It's going to be an A-side and a B-side. I don't know what songs I'm putting out yet. I got a few to choose from. But this one is the first single I put out during the spring. And we're going to leave you on this note. That dad life. You're not a dad, right? You're just getting married?
Yeah, just settling down, not a dad yet.
All right. So, living that dad life is a tough thing. And I want to tell you, everyone out there that's still on, if you're a dad out there, I'm 45 years old. I'm an old man, right? And today, I'm not drinking a beer because I'm under strict doctor orders. Because this afternoon, I had my first colonoscopy. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, and I came out healthy. So knock on wood, they gave me a clean bill of health there. I don't have to go back for another 10 years. So if you're a dad and you're 45 years old, go out there, get a colonoscopy. I want to see if anyone's commenting about this. I'm not saying it's a fun time. Getting the prep is not great about it, but hey, man, be healthy for your kids. And get it done because it's an important screening. One of my friends did not get a good screening, and he had to go through chemo. So, but if he didn't get that screening, he wouldn't be doing that. And he has 2 kids, so he's gotten that. And it's important. Did I enjoy it? Oh my God, did I enjoy my colonoscopy? It was actually pretty enjoyable. The prep is difficult. I'll tell you this: you have to drink like Miralax, and you go to the bathroom, but you clears out your whole system, so you feel very clean afterwards for sure. And but yeah, it was a very quaint situation in the operating room. They just give you that anesthesia. They say you're about to go to sleep. You wake up, and then doctor tells you how you did. So it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know how old. If you want, I don't mind asking you. How old are you, Curtis?
I'm 32.
Okay. All right. So, and you get married. When's the due date?
So
You
gonna be,
not to do. You're not having a kid. Sorry. When's your wedding dates?
so we're looking at August of next year. So like August 8th, I think, is going to be the date for next year.
Nice. That's a good year. That's a good date. Maybe the Whitneys that day. Come up and get married up here in Saratoga. Get married at the track.
Florida. So it looks like Florida. We're going to go down to Florida and do a little small thing on the beach. So save some money. But you know, you can still bet on the Twin Spire. So I'll probably have some Whitney bets in.
Nice, man. Yeah, my son was born right the day before the Whitney, so that was good. But yeah, man, as I said, you had a good thing. If undefeated horse keeps winning, keeps betting on them, I've done that a bunch of times with Justify, Bricks and Mortar. So that's when I was really into the horse races. So all the horse racing people out there, you know, eventually I'll get back into it. Who knows? But did I enjoy it? Yes, I did enjoy it. So on that note, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. We're way over time, but I'm going to leave you with my video. If you haven't seen it before, it's called That Dad Life. So for Dad Rap, Saratoga Slim, Curtis Manlow, and the Racing Dudes, peace. I'm out. Yo, this goes out to all the dads out there just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now, just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now, just living that dad life. If you're a dad, yeah, just living that dad life. Strap the kids in a car seat, hop in the front and let's go. Ride with me in your family sedans, your SUVs or your minivans. Third row seat, at least taking a beating. Crumbs all over from food your kids eating. Get Aaron silly putty stuck on your interior. You ask your kids a question, but they ain't hearing ya. That's a dad's life, not trying to have a mad wife. Tell my kids to ass nice, trying to get my act right. Hold it down like gravity, all about my family. Trying to live amicably, don't know how to handle me. I know they gotta live with me, bout my positivity. And yo, I wanna say thanks for what you're giving me. I'm breaking my back, making this cash, inflation and tax. But now I'm just taking out the trash, making the beds, making the bread. But my wife and kids still looking at me, shaking their heads. That dad life, yeah, yeah, sing along. Just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now. Just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now. Just living that dad life. Trying to get my act right. A dad gotta do what a dad gotta do. My kids want food, I take them to drive-thru. They want Mickey D's, I want my kids mellow. And yo, the Happy Meals come with Squishmallows. That's just one thing that you do as a dad. Now you're rolling up the Target with reusable bags. Get them at the car seats. My kids really are sweet. My boy wants a car, my girl wants a Barbie. And they're both behaving. The dad is quick to cave in, I gave in. This dad ain't toy depraving. I bought those toys willingly, now it's off the Billy Bees. I want my kids to chill with me, that's what's fulfilling me. I'm building for my children until I get a billion. But now they sick at home, give them amoxicillin. Cause you're a super dad with an S on your chest, right behind your Patagonia vest. That dad life, yeah, yeah, sing along. Just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now. Just living that dad life. Ride with me now, ride with me now. Just living that dad life. Trying to get my act right. Yo, to all the dads out there, just getting by. Hold your head up high. I'm out.